Hey everybody, today's episode is brought to you by two sponsors. The first is Brand Bucket. Deciding on a name and securing the appropriate domain is often a struggle for entrepreneurs and startups. Endless hours are spent brainstorming names and attempting to find that perfect name. Brand Bucket helps you solve that problem so you can spend your time solving more pressing ones. Brand Bucket is the largest marketplace of curated creative business names with a .com domain. Names are pronounceable, easy to remember, catchy, and short. Best of all, they're all guaranteed at a fixed, available price, so there's no need to go through the arduous task of price negotiations. Each name also comes with a high-quality logo ready to use as soon as you purchase. How I Built It listeners can go to brandbucket.com/howibuiltit to get started. And for a limited time, you will get a $75 Envato Marketplace gift card with the purchase of a name. This episode is also brought to you by Hoban Cards. Hoban Cards is a tiny letterpress printing shop located in Chehalis, Washington. Evan, Ben, and Claire work hard hand-feeding 3 antique letterpresses. They specialize in minimal custom letterpress printed calling cards and stationery. I can personally vouch for them. I recently had cards created by Hoban Cards, and they are some of the finest quality I've ever had. They are absolutely excellent. You can go to the show notes and take a look at them. I absolutely love them. If you need calling cards or stationery for your business, head over to hobancards.com today. And now, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? My guest today is Matt Medeiros of PluginTut and the Matt Report. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Joe, it's always a pleasure to join the radio waves with you.
Yes, absolutely. So Matt and I have recorded quite a few episodes of his podcast, Plugged In Radio, together. So we get on these recordings pretty regularly. So today we are going to talk all about PluginTut and kind of how you came up with the idea and some of the successes and some of the pitfalls that you've had with that. So let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your product and how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, so let's see. It really started sort of getting into podcasting and doing YouTube. It started probably about 5 years ago. And that started with the Matt Report, the idea of the Matt Report, which is just an audio-only podcast. Now it used to be video, it used to be YouTube. But then it sort of spilled over on some other products that I create that are more traditional, like plugins and themes for my company. And we spun up a YouTube channel specifically for the product space. And we spent a lot of time in YouTube. We spent a lot of money producing stuff with, just buying like video cameras, lighting equipment, spending the time creating these shows, and really saw some good traction, right? So, the advantage to, connecting with an audience on YouTube is probably fairly obvious at this point is, if they like what you're saying and you're teaching them something and you're getting right to the point, they're going to either be a customer or at least a loyal fan to kind of spread the word. But over the years, the studio has taken a different route, right? So now we're just doing more traditional client services and, just getting into bigger projects. So that type of client, they're not on YouTube like watching our fun WordPress videos anymore. So PluginTut is sort of taking from what we were doing over there with product reviews and WordPress tutorials and just doing it under sort of my own personal brand, because most folks were connecting with the videos that way with me. And it's not a topic that I want to put into the Matt Report ecosystem, because that's much more about the business, the entrepreneur journey, and just having conversations with people on how to build their businesses versus let me teach you how to use, Beaver Builder or something like that. So that's where the idea of PluginTut was born from.
Cool. Very cool. And so you're in a fairly competitive space, right? There's like the Envato tutorials and stuff like that. I don't know why I said it like that with like such disdain. I didn't mean to say it like that. But I mean, there are a lot of tutorials and stuff like that. So, and did you kind of do any research? It sounds like you were kind of already doing this before, but how did you want to position yourself kind of differently, I guess?
Yeah. So when I was young, I always wanted to be a YouTuber. No, just kidding. What I've found really over the years of doing this stuff is that the the audience, it really depends on your audience and how well they can relate to you, right? So, if you're doing tutorials and teaching people how to do stuff, and I'm doing tutorials and teaching people how to do stuff, people are going to, for the most part, find the person that they like to follow. They might follow both of us. In fact, there are some, there's like a 10% of people who are just diehard, consume all of this information. They're willing to learn from everyone all the time, and they might subscribe to both of us, right? But a majority of them are going to stick with your voice and the way that you approach things, and same thing with me. They'll stick with my voice and how I approach things. So I'm not really worried to the degree of, big name competition. There's plenty of people out there doing things, and here's a fun story. Like I did a tutorial on, and just learning, like, again, the pitfalls of like learning what happens when you let your voice come out, right? So I did a quick overview video of everyone's favorite theme called Divi. And I think you and I talked about this off air. Mm. The people that use Divi and the people that watch that video, are just criticizing me and leaving me, crazy comments because I criticize the product, right? And that's my own voice coming through as like somebody who does WordPress with air quotes in the air the right way. Using a product like Divi, it feels a little dirty, right? And it doesn't feel right to a degree. So I let that shine through a little bit and criticize the product. Not even that bad, in fact. And is just like an outrage of comments. So definitely seeing the ups and downs of letting your personality come through in YouTube or audio clips, but just knowing that, look, people are still going to associate with me. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that video has brought me 75 subs to the channel. So for all of the for all the haters out there, I got literally, let's see, there's probably about 14 like bad comments. That's like 4 or 5 times the amount of subscribers from it. So not bad.
Yeah, very nice. That's great. And I mean, we talked about this on, I think, your podcast. It's voice matters. So even if other people are saying the same thing, they're not saying it in your voice. So that's a great point.
That's correct.
Yeah. Cool. We talk a lot about a whole bunch of different things, but we don't really talk business advice with each other. Like a little bit here and there, but are there people that you do like go to for business advice, or is it mostly like I think we met through Post Status, or like linked up here with Post Status. So, where do you go for advice, I guess?
Number one, I have two answers to this. Number one is all the guests I have on my podcast is me selfishly asking the questions because I'm just generally interested to learn, their types of things. And today's episode that went out, which is the finale of season 3, is Nathan Barry of ConvertKit. And that was just a tremendous lesson for me, right? Just the way he approached things on launching a product. But number two, I listened to your past episodes as well. And a lot of folks said that they're part of a mastermind. I'm part of a mastermind as well, with some fairly successful WordPress product people. And, we meet every other Friday. And sometimes, like right now, we're doing some guest people come on to talk to us. Even though it's the same 6 of us that meet every other week, now we're bringing on some people, some outsiders to just talk about their business and sort of be like, put them on the hot seat and ask them questions. And these are people that are much more successful than we are, and sort of get the down low from them. But masterminds my podcast, really.
Yeah, man, masterminds are like, I'll tell you what, I started this podcast for the same reason it sounds like you have your podcast. I was asking people advice and about how to kind of take the direction of another project of mine, and I thought, man, it would be cool to like publish these conversations, and so I find that our community, like the WordPress community in general, is really generous with their advice. Because I mean, I'm in a mastermind with a couple of people. One of them is not in WordPress, but it sounds like you guys are all kind of in the same space, and you could be competitors, but you are sharing information and helping each other out.
Sure, and just something that I want to add to that sort of nugget of some nugget of advice here is, one of the things that, because you bring up WordPress, and WordPress, most folks are very generous with their knowledge and their helpful advice. a lot of folks also get caught up in reading like transparency reports. And Rob Walling, who's a past guest on the show, from Drip, another email marketing automation service, in fact, he talked about how he sort of doesn't do the transparency reports anymore, right? And doesn't sort of share that information because he's actually been burned in the past with sharing too much information. And I mentioned that not as like a dangerous like warning, but just sort of something that says that sort of even validates masterminds even more, that you're in a group of people that you trust. Right. So you can share that information. It's one thing to like help somebody out in the WordPress space. But when it comes to business, like you said, some of us can be competitors. And in fact, some of the people in my mastermind are also service providers, and we've bid on the same project, not knowing until afterwards. So it's important that you trust the people in your mastermind. That's really what makes a mastermind work really well, and making sure that people are dedicated to it as well. That's like number 2. Like they have to show up every week, or else it just becomes, it just doesn't. The validation falls through.
Yeah, that's so big that you trust the people that you talk to. The Rob Walling episode is a really good one. So if you guys are looking for something to listen to after this episode, definitely check that out over at thematreport.com. Right? Is it the Matt Report or mattreport.com?
Just mattreport.com.
All right, so that's a really excellent episode. I just listened to that the other day, actually. So awesome, and I mean that's finding a group of people you trust is really important. And I'm lucky that everybody on my show has been people that either I look up to or I trust, and so it really makes talking to people a lot easier. So now, just as a precursor to this next question, you're in the service. You do service and products. Do you do a lot of coding and stuff like that?
Absolutely zero.
All right, gotcha. But you do like sell themes and stuff like that through through like Slocum Studio. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So Slocum Studio is the agency and the services. Slocum Themes are the themes, and then Conductor plugin is our content builder plugin. Gotcha.
Okay, so you do no coding. You're the brain behind it, and then you kind of contract this work out. Is that?
Yeah, well, I have 3 full-time employees, and they work they work on the services side of the house a majority of the time, and then whenever we have a breathing moment, we'll work on the product side. Much more focused on the plugin at the moment, and not so much the themes. Although we did recently release a theme. It was actually released almost a year ago, but it finally got approved on .org. So
nice.
There's that.
Nice. Cool. So this is going to be a really interesting question. I'm very curious to hear your answer to this then. So for PluginTut, how did you build it? Because you have the site, you have the videos, and you do the podcast. Like I'd be really interested, and hopefully the listeners will too, to hear like what kind of tools you use to make all of that happen.
Yeah. I do have a blog post that I started to draft when I started building it out, because what I realized was, in setting a deadline, like PluginTut is the first sort of web property. Well, I shouldn't say this, but in the last few years that I've launched with like a precise plan, and even that hasn't gone exactly to the T. But when I sat down with it, I said, look, I'm going to make this as precise as possible. I don't want to mess around with a theme, tweaking every bit of everything that I want, how I want it to look, and all that stuff. So what I did was I looked at my themes, and none of them are really geared towards sort of the magazine or sort of news type of layout. It very much, the stuff that we produce is much more small business and traditional portfolio site. So what I did is I went over to Mike McAllister's site, array.is. I had him on the podcast as well, Array Themes. And I picked up, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it was one of his latest themes, probably the one that's just behind the one he just released. And I used that because I really enjoyed the typography, the layout, the style of it. And I had another friend, Chris Langilli, who created the logo for me. And he's, again, another gentleman that I've had on the podcast before. And he did me a favor and hooked me up with a logo for Plugged In Radio and PluginTut. So the idea behind that was let's not waste time.
Yeah.
Let's not waste time on tweaking designs. Like, yes, I could have used my baton theme and I could have changed the styling, but honestly, I'm in a position where I just didn't have enough time to do that. And nor did it really fit the need. I had to take my own advice and tell somebody, look, if you're picking a theme because it should do like 90% of what you want. If you start changing more than that 10%, you got to find another theme. Like, if you're in a crunch. So that's what I did. And then I spent a considerable amount of time just setting up all of the social sites and branding all of that stuff. So just getting that logo and going through and creating all of the media assets for every social network, the avatars, the cover photos, the 8 by 800 by 800 dimension for whatever, right? Like all of these different sites that you have to go and set your logos on to set them all up. And I use Canva for that, canva.com. It's sort of like an online image manipulation service, right? Or like a Photoshop online kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they have all these templates for Facebook and Twitter and SoundCloud and all that stuff, iTunes. So I went through and I created all of the assets for that. And I just said, look, what is PluginTut? It's a home for WordPress tutorials, right? Handcrafted WordPress tutorials is sort of my spin on it, right? This isn't a content farm of, ghost writers who come in and just whip up, 37 roofing company themes, which I can't even believe there is, but there is. So this is me taking my time, doing it sort of handcrafted, and taking my time on each one. And Plugged-in Radio is, the spin of, look, I talk to plugin developers and have them demonstrate their product. Like just come on the airs with me and say, here's what my plugin does. This is who it's best suited for. And let me show you how to use it in a sort of, as much as I can, middle of the road, not trying to sell it, but present it, right? Present it and tell us who it's best fit for. And, in putting all of that stuff together in terms of the branding is just isolating plugintut.com for, the written tutorials and youtube.com/plugintut for just the video tutorials, right? Of course, you connect them back, you connect them to each other through posts and whatnot, but just setting up those two silos and getting right to work and starting with, thinking back now, this is the beginning of July. So I think I pre-drafted or drafted 3 or 4 blog posts on Jetpack, one gigantic 3,000 word post on selecting the best plugin, and just sort of seeded all this content so that the day that I launched, I wasn't thinking to myself, oh dear God, right. I have to now go and write all of this content. But, what I used to do that was actually Google Docs. Unfortunately, I can't find a good way to switch between my desktop and my laptop and opening up WordPress and drafting. I like to do everything in Google Docs. Plus, I have an editor, and she goes through and sort of cleans it up. And gets it sort of published ready. And that's when I launched. And so I launched. I launched with that. And I also pre-recorded 4 or 5 episodes of Plugged-in Radio and got that ready to go too. Because again, I didn't want to be stuck thinking, oh geez, I've launched. Now I have to go create this content, try to save myself a little bit there and get all this content ready. Mm-hmm. And from there, I really, you and I just did a show on tools on blogging. I didn't install a lot of plugins on PluginTut. It's Jetpack, Yoast, the traditional stuff. Nothing crazy that I can think of. Opt-in Monster for capturing the email leads and stuff like that. And, I don't even know what PowerPress for the podcast side of the house and YouTube and just YouTube embeds really at this point, and nothing crazy in terms of how I actually built the site.
Yeah, so it's really content driven. I mean, I think that's a really great takeaway is that we've had a lot of developers on the show so far. We've had people who have like really developer centric products, but I mean, you've got something out there, and you're just you found the tools you need. I love that you didn't spend a whole lot of time tweaking the theme. Like WP in 1 month is a Beaver builder site because I was more focused on writing the content than on developing the theme, even though I can do that, right? So the fact that you had content ready to go and you have your, the reason you're doing this and that kind of guides you is, I think, really, really great advice for anybody who wants to start their own project online.
Honestly, I would even say if if you're thinking of anything in content and growing an audience, I'd almost like, you really have to focus, because here's a quick sort of story of what went on in my head. In probably the second month going into it, I did start to fall behind on creating blog posts, and I still do to some degree, to the point where I was almost like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have built the blog first, and I should have just built the YouTube channel first. And I guess what I'm getting at here is finding what you're naturally good at. Like, what's the one thing like you can bang out in an afternoon? And for me, it's just creating videos.
Nice.
Because for the most part, if you're somebody who's not having to edit all the time, and you're not doing a lot of outtakes, or you don't really care about that kind of thing, creating a video for me is so much easier and faster to upload it to YouTube than to sit down and, draft 600, 900, 1200 words to a tutorial.
Conversely, it's the exact opposite for me. I can bang on a blog post in an hour, and it takes me like 4 hours to do like a 20-minute video or a 10-minute video.
Yeah. To the point where I was almost like, I really, maybe I should just switch it and say that, PluginTut is really just YouTube videos for right now. But I'm still hanging on with it.
Nice. So it sounds like you're kind of thinking about this transformation. You just started in July, so you're still kind of finding your grasp. But I'm going to combine the last two questions here, right? How's your product gone through any transformation since first launch? / what are your plans for the future? Because it sounds like your plans could be the next transformation, if there's any. Yeah.
So, one of the things that is sort of embedded in the content, and one of the things I had told myself in the beginning was, so the reason why I don't do tutorials on Matterport is because, again, it's just business, right? That's what I want it to be. And I didn't want that content to be mixed up, right? Because I have a lot of opinions about WordPress. I have a lot of opinions about products and how people do things. And I didn't want that message or that signal to be crossed through the Matterport. But it's also like, I can't avoid it. It's like one of those things where it's just like, my opinion always comes through. And even when I'm doing a tutorial, I'll catch myself saying, well, I wish they would have done, I wish they would have done this, or they would have worded it differently, or that kind of thing. So what I really think I might do is, in terms of like transitioning the content of PluginTut, is I haven't thought it fully through yet, but I might just like preface something by saying like, there's a lot of opinion in this piece. This might not be a tutorial. This might be my actual review. Like, I didn't want to do reviews. I wanted to just teach you how to use something. And that really came to light again when I did the Divi video, and I let my emotions get a hold of me. So I might sort of spin that a little bit. But the other thing that's coming is maybe just some more focused, tutorials on the site, more traditional courses. That, again, still isn't something that is fully fleshed out yet, but finding ways to get somebody more just, engaged with taking a tutorial, right? So a pass or fail, that kind of thing. I don't want to do a membership stuff. I've already done that with the Matterport. It's not something I'm really interested in, but what can I do to get somebody to, quote unquote, take a course and just feel like they got something out of it, even if it was just like learning how to install the plugin at its base level, but they felt sort of empowered and they can sort of tell people that now I know how to do this. So that's something that I'm exploring at this point.
Cool. That sounds awesome. And so kind of like a sidebar question, I guess, and feel free to say as little or as much as you want about this, but the previous interviews have been with kind of product people or service people. It's very clear how they have like a profitable thing, right? I know making money blogging can be tough. Can you talk about kind of like the challenges? You don't have to say numbers, obviously, but I'm interested in how you approach going about making money with this, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Listen, absolutely. This is my favorite topic, right? So, here's the thing. Again, I'm gonna go back to that sort of Divi scenario, because again, this is sort of my. Okay, so I'll tell you how I'm going to monetize the blog. So 1, affiliates, right? 2, direct ad sales. 3, maybe some kind of professional service. I don't know what that is. Maybe something like we just chatted about. So I got these 3 sort of revenue models sort of outlined. And this is my first, again, air quotes, affiliate type thing where I'm actually using affiliate links, disclosing it, that kind of thing, but saying that I'm only supporting the products that I feel will also support the end user, right? So while I might not like a product, again, like a Divi, I feel like the product team behind Divi, they're not going anywhere. They're not trying to rip anybody off like I see with a lot of internet marketing companies. So even though I might not use it for my own projects, I might use an affiliate link to help teach somebody how to use it maybe the right way and caution them, that kind of thing. Anyway, I've been doing that since the start. I made $43. Not just off of Divi, but just off my whole collective amount of affiliate links throughout the site. Okay. Yeah. So I tweeted the other day, like as a joke, follow me as I try to 10x that journey just to pay for insurance. That's the life of sort of a content marketing entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The other thing is direct ad sales. And I think that this is an area in the WordPress industry that is going to get real interesting real soon in terms of competitiveness and who's really, scoring the bigger bucks. I'm already into the five figures of sponsorship for PluginTut and Plugged In Radio. I just got my second sort of flagship content partner yesterday, Pluginize by Web Dev Studios. So securing folks that I know that provide a great, number one, have a great products. Number two, they can back it up in terms of support and coding. And number three, that I know will be around for a little while. And number four, that they're actually people that are out in the community helping the WordPress community is very important to me, because this is to me anyway, I look at ad spots as, again, my voice saying, I recommend this product. Like if all of a sudden, e-cigarettes wanted to sponsor my show, I'd probably say no. Like I don't care really how much money you were giving me. I have no affinity to e-cigarettes or anything like that.
Right. And it's your reputation, right? And your word is gold as far as people who listen to you, and you don't want to diminish that.
That's correct. So, those are three areas that I'm pursuing in terms of monetization. Again, sort of affiliate sales, direct ad sales, and sponsorships, and then kind of looking for a service, professional service, maybe more towards the plugin developers or product developers that are out there. I don't know exactly what that is yet, but it might coming sooner or later.
Nice, that's awesome, and I think that's. Again, that's really sound advice for anybody who wants to get into the content side of things, because that stuff is by no way easy. I'm doing the same thing for this podcast and WP in 1 month, and you just kind of grind it out. And, if your sponsors trust you as a person and the stuff that you're putting out, then it'll do well for you, I think. So we're coming up at the end of time. So we're going to wrap up with my favorite question, and the one that always takes people by surprise because it's not in the regular numbered list, and that is, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Ooh, let's see, trade secrets. Well, I can tell you that one piece of advice, especially if you're looking to connect with other people in the WordPress space and even maybe get into content marketing or content monetization services, is number one, it's going to take time. Number two, you have to do a phenomenal job. Not every piece of content has to be phenomenal, but you do have to show up consistently. And that's really the key to it. And direct sales and marketing is the key to any business. And I don't care how many systems or automations you put in place or keywords you buy up or Facebook ads you invest in. Sales is the lifeline of the business, and you have to be, confident enough to go out there and make those sales and connect with people. And what's the worst they could say is no, right?
Exactly. That's such great advice. Absolutely.
I guess my trade secret was I grew up in car sales, so I guess I'm not afraid to ask people.
Yeah, well, it's
a sale.
That's something I just learned recently. Like, just ask, and if they say no, they say no, and maybe you put you gave them an earworm, and they'll think about it later and be like, hey, that is a good podcast, or that is a good blog. I would like to support that blog. So, that is excellent advice. So. Cool. Matt, thank you very much for joining me. If you want to find more of Matt online, you can go to mattreport.com or PluginTut.com or any place else they can find you. Lots of other places.
No, I think if you just search for Matt Medeiros on Google, you find me. There is an ex-VP of Dell and Cisco Systems, and I sometimes actually get his emails. And
Wow.
I've got some pretty good offers from Fortune 500 companies before.
Nice. Well, that's very nice for you. Probably surprising for them. But anyway. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, Brand Bucket and Hoban Cards. And until next week, go out there and build something.